Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube video segment, I'm going to be talking about a show many of you may heard of or may even watch religiously, like I do. It's a show called Forensic Files, and it's funny. I had a friend of mine that told me one time he thought I was addicted to the ESPN network, but I think HLN might be starting to usurp that title as far as the most addicted channel that I watch, the channel that I watch that I'm most addicted to, I should say. Well, anyway, I love this show Forensic Files because it talks about all these advancements and technology as far as solving crimes forensically, and they even had one episode where they were able to somehow ascertain a person's, I guess you could say, their ethnicity, complexion, to I believe, over 90% accuracy. And I mean, it just shows you how phenomenal this is in terms of the advancement in DNA technology. They had one episode where what happened was somebody somebody had died, and I believe it was initially ruled just like a death of natural causes or what have you, and I guess they didn't perform an autopsy, or at least not extensively, or the autopsy perhaps wasn't done as extensively as it should have in terms of trying to ascertain the manner in which the person died. And what happened was they dug up the ashes they somehow got the ashes from the person that had died, and they were able to determine that the person had died from arsenic poisoning. And they somehow, I guess if I remember correctly, they separated the organic material from the inorganic, and that was part of the process in determining this. And it's getting to a point where perhaps this show, as beneficial as it is, it's going to make would-be or wannabe criminals or people that want to commit unscrupulous or heinous crimes, it's going to make them a lot more reluctant and apprehensive to do so because of this, because the advancement in DNA technology is such where, I mean, all somebody has to really do is leave a piece of hair at a crime scene, and they're basically, I mean, they're going to be busted. And I mean, and I think what makes this show so fascinating, it makes it such a learned experience, is because they show such a wide divergence of ways that people can be apprehended through the use of forensic technology. They have super glue fuming in order to remove latent fingerprints. I've seen some episodes where they've used some kind of plaster material to put on impressions of a tire that was left at a crime scene. There was one episode where and I'm sure others had this as well, where persistence and perseverance figured prominently in solving a case. I saw one episode where they had one set of detectives were going from one mailbox to another in a community, and they were actually inserting the key into one mailbox after another, and they finally found one that fit, which helped ultimately to help them solve the murder mystery. And the show itself is beyond fascinating. And I think, as far as my favorite networks, it's probably what many of you may have heard of that show on ESPN called Pardon the Interruption, where you have two people, Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon, will be debating various sports subjects. When something can go either way on as far as a subject goes, they say it's a toss-up. Well, I would say it's a toss-up between ESPN and HLN as far as my favorite network that I like to watch, because I'm actually very enamored with both of them for different reasons. And as far as HLN's Forensic Files go, I mean, people can really they can really learn a lot, in that the forensic technology is so multifaceted and has so many nuances. So there's so many branches of it. You have people doing handwriting. They have forensic handwriting analysts even that can determine forgeries. So they even had one episode where they were able to get like a partial fingerprint to eventually find somebody. I love the episodes where you'll see, not because of the person being killed or murdered, of course, but the way in which this something gets solved years after it's committed. Like, say somebody has murdered somebody in the late 1950s, and they're able to elude police for number of decades even. And what happens is the forensic technology ultimately catches up with them. And all of a sudden you're looking at the late 90s, early 2000s, and they finally, by running the DNA or fingerprint through a computer database, they're able to determine who committed the crime. And like I stated before, these kind of advancements is going to get to a point where people are going to be so reluctant to even commit these crimes. And I think this is one of the shows on TV which really helps. It acts as a deterrent for crime to some degree. And just like when John Walsh had his show, many of you may have heard of it, remember, America's Most Wanted, and now he hosts a show called The Hunt. And shows like these, I really give people credit. These people don't deserve, really can't get, they can't really get too much accolades or recognition for what they do, because this work is priceless. By putting these shows on TV, it does something where it can cast doubt in a potential criminal's mind in terms of wanting to go out and commit crimes. You're not going to stop crimes completely. You're always going to have corrupt people around, and there's always going to be something where you're going to have people that want to be fearless in their way, want to say, well, I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm still going to go out and do whatever, which is what some people will do, unfortunately. But at the same time, I think these shows are very advantageous, and Forensic Files is really a great show as far as this goes. And I believe it was formerly known as Mystery Detectives, if I'm not mistaken. And this show really has just, I think, done wonders for I guess you could say, for making the general public cognizant of the forensic technology that is out there. And it just shows you there are just so many ways that people can get apprehended through the use of this forensic technology. And to me, the show can never get enough credit, really, that it really deserves. I think what's interesting, I saw one show, and you can see, I think, some of the different personalities of some of the people on here are what's really interesting to me. They had one episode where a woman, a wife of a guy, was accused of starting a fire. I believe it was like in a garage or something, and they saw some kind of blunt force trauma to the guy's head when they were looking at it later. I don't know if it was during the autopsy or whatever, the coroner was analyzing, examining it, and looking at the case superficially, it looked like that the woman had to be guilty. But here's the thing, what touched me, and I actually cried, well, after watching this episode, because it was something that really touched me. They put a little spiritual aspect or element into this episode, and after the woman was being interrogated by a detective, the woman, sometimes the detectives use their little tactics, and they leave the interrogation room, and they want to see if the woman or man or whatever, the suspect, says anything incriminating, and they look at the video. And what this woman did was she did something, I guess you could say, was the antithesis of something incriminating. She put her head down and she basically said something, I don't remember the exact words, but something to the effect, well, God, what am I supposed to do to tell these people, convince them I didn't commit this crime? And she was sobbing. And when this was played to the jury, it looked very contrite and ingenuous. And ultimately, I think that really helped get her exonerated from this crime. And they eventually proved that that there was no crime that was committed, that it was simply an accident, that somebody had either, I don't remember which was which, either poured a gasoline in some container, or poured or kerosene, and whatever it did, it caused a big prodigious explosion when he put the wick in it. And what it was just an accidental thing. And basically the woman was extricated and exonerated from this crime she was accused of. But what I want to get to is the personality of this detective. I think it was really just what it was is he just didn't want to admit he was wrong, because at the end of the show he had stated that he still felt that the woman committed the crime. And he said that he really sounded very adamant about her doing this. And I mean, the forensic evidence doesn't lie. I think it was just a thing where he had a very resolute, maybe obstinate personality, and I think it was just a pride thing where he just didn't want to admit that he was wrong. I mean, when you have forensic people going in there and finding things scientifically, and that's really that's going to be the underlying thing now in a courtroom, and that ultimately helped get her free. And between the fact when they saw the woman on the videotape crying out to God, I wanted to say that the spiritual element I saw in that was when this woman did this. Ultimately, I think what happened was that the man upstairs did set her free, because she cried out to God. And when the jury saw that videotape, that was one element that ultimately freed her. And that was maybe the man upstairs working in a rather, maybe a subtle way, but he still, I think he had something to do with that. She was meant to call out to him, and that was his way he answered her. I really believe that. Well, anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube segment for my take on the show Forensic Files. And until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.